Okay, hello. My name is Estella Roddy, and let's talk about Indonesian art. So, here we have a map of Indonesia um, and some of the key cities and places. Um, so, Indonesia has always been a really key trade port. It traded rice, tropical fruits, animals, plant resins, hardwood, and spices, amongst other things. They mostly traded with China and India due to how close they were. And through this trade, Hinduism and Buddhism were introduced. And with later trade with around Saudi Arabia, Islam and Christianity were introduced. Now, almost 90% of Indonesians are Muslim. Um, Arab Muslim trade started around the 8th century in Indonesia. So Islam started to spread though at around the end of the 13th century AD. So the native Indonesians of the archipelago practiced indigenous animism and Dainism. These beliefs centered around revering ancestral spirits, believing that some spirits may inhabit certain places, such as like large trees or stones or mountains or forests or any other sacred place. So, as I mentioned, there's a lot of trade with India. Um, so, through that, Hinduism was introduced to Indonesia in around the first century AD. Stories from the Mahabharata um, were carried on to India or to Indonesia from India. The Mahabharata is the epic of Hindu myths. And then later on, again through trade with India, Indonesia was introduced to Buddhism. So first, let's take a look at prehistoric art. So we can see the bottom painting of the boar. This was found in a cave, and it's thought to be around 45,000 years old, which is insane. There are also really beautiful, significant megaliths, which are these giant stone carvings. For example, the bottom right one was is in the Baba Valley in Sulawesi, Indonesia. Side note: the megaliths remind me personally of some of the statues in Spirited Away, um, which I think is quite interesting. So, paintings and sculptures in Indonesia. Indonesian art really enjoyed a golden age during the Majapahit Empire, which was around the 13th through 15th century. During this period, there were a lot of Hindu and Buddhist brick temples, which have really tall, slender roofs with red brick gates and really stylized geometry. So, in around the 15th century, when Islam was very popular, a lot of mosques were built as well. So, stone and bronze sculptures were really popular in the 8th through 10th century CE in Java and Bali. So, typically, these would be relief sculptures or friezes, or even freestanding statues. These statues would have very calm expressions, as though they were very serene. So most art was really decorative, as it was considered a really religious activity. For instance, the Kamasan is the oldest Balinese style of painting. This really depicted a lot of scenes from the Mahabharata. It's usually characterized with super detailed lines, with a lot of red and yellow and black outlines. So these were stories, these were scenes, as you can see in the far left bottom, far left top, and the top middle paintings. We can see these scenes with really incredible detail, and there's a clear influence from Indian art. So wayang translates to theater. This is puppet theater. So this was used for Hinduism and Buddhism. It was used to acclimate people to the religion. So it was unfortunately suppressed when Islam took over, as depictions of prophets and idols was strictly prohibited. So to make these puppets, they were usually made out of buffalo hide or goat hide, usually mounted on bamboo sticks. To make a really high quality puppet, you would take a young female buffalo hide and cure it for like up to 10 years. You would take a mallet and a tata, aka tapping tool, and you would etch in a sketch and punch holes through it. You would then sew these onto bamboo rods and they'd be ready to perform. So this is really both a performing art and a more traditional visual art. When performing, you would stretch a linen canvas and seat the delang or puppeteer behind the linen to separate them from the audience. The linen would be lit from behind with a coconut oil lamp. This represents the sun. A banana tree trunk is seated between the delang and the linen, so the delang can place the rods with the puppets against the screen so they don't have to hold it. The banana trunk represents the earth, whereas the canvas is the sky with the sun in it. So to the right of the delang, there's a puppet chest, which the delang uses as a drum during the performance, hitting it with a wooden mallet. There's an orchestra seated behind them, the delang, playing music throughout the performance. It's thought that divine forces guide the delang's hand as they animate the puppet. So traditional Wang performance begins after dark in 3 phases. First, the characters are introduced and the conflict is launched. This lasts until midnight. The second phase lasts about 3 hours, and it's the battle. The third phase is reconciliation and friendship, and this finishes at dawn. And again, these are mostly stories from the Mahabharata, the Hindu epics. So these tell religious stories lasting all night, this devotion. So art was religious, no matter what. For Hinduism and Buddhism particularly, Wang sculpture and painting were very important religious activities that show your faith and devotion. This devotion through art was suppressed with the takeover of Islam, as again, depictions of idols were prohibited. Nonetheless, all of this art plays a really key role to understanding Indonesian history and culture through visiting cave paintings, or if you get the chance, going to a Wang puppet show. If so, I would be very jealous. Here are the links to my research and to the images. And thank you. Stick around for more.